This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel, broadcasting remotely. One of the best things about summer is going to live concerts and performances. But this year, musicians and performing artists around the world have had to cancel tours and shows. Today, Where We Live, we learn how local artists have adapted in this pandemic. Coming up, we hear from Parkville Sounds, a recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford, about how people are still finding a way to gather and play music safely. Now, have you picked up a new instrument over the last several months or dusted off an old one? We talked to John McCarthy, founder and instructor at Rock House School of Music, about how his school continues to connect with students. Now, are you a local musician or performing artist? We want to hear from you today. You can join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WMPR. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Where We Live. Joining us first on Zoom is Sarah Koffold. She's Artistic Director of Concenare Choral Community in Eastern Connecticut. Sarah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy.
We know that you have a tight-knit community of singers that you work with. It's been an interesting several months for all of us. Tell us, when you're working with this choral community, what were your plans before the shutdown began?
Well, we actually had a women's choir festival planned for the end of March, and it was supposed to be bringing some local women's choirs together to explore suffrage and where we are on this 100 years on the road to universal suffrage. And we were going to have a workshop with a special guest and speakers, and it was going to culminate in where we all sang together. And we're really disappointed that that wasn't able to happen. It was supposed to be end of March. We were also going to pair with the local community orchestra and do a big community sing where everyone who wanted to could be on stage at the beautiful Performing Arts Center at Eastern Connecticut University to sing Beethoven's Ninth and another choral orchestral work, which is kind of a special opportunity, and that was supposed to be for May. So there were a lot of collaborations, which was really exciting for this year that we had to, at the beginning, postpone, and now we've sort of canceled until further notice, until we know when we're going to be able to gather again in large numbers to hold a performance.
It's disappointing when you have all of these plans and they get canceled. But on a personal note, Sarah, what does it mean for you to gather with this choral community and sing, and the fact that you can't do that in the same way?
Well, you know, there's something really amazing and special and almost magical when you sing with other people. Your voice changes. And not in a bad way. It's in a wonderful way. It's like your voices kind of connect and meld, and the different vocal colors of your voice sort of connect and they interlock. And that's really special, which you can't really recreate singing remotely. And then putting it together in post-production with like a virtual choir. It's different. Your voice is just you. It's not you with, Cara or you with Brian. It's just you. And I think that's what's important about a choir, is that we change each other, we breathe together, we work together, and it creates something beautiful. And we've lost that. And it was those first maybe couple weeks, it really was a grieving process. And I felt a distinct feeling of loss. And then it took a while to kind of garner my strength to figure out, okay, now what can we do during this interim, which we thought was only going to be a few months. We thought, what kind of band-aids could we put on our program to give people that feeling of community and connection and breathing together, but not be in the same room where we could keep folks safe. So that was the hardest part, was trying to reinvent or recreate something that is, you can't recreate that feeling of singing together. It's just so special. So we did our best, and we did a virtual choir rehearsal. So they would meet with me on Zoom, and we would do our very best and connect and talk. And I would sing, and they would sing with me. I just couldn't hear them because the technology was not up to that point. I think we're getting closer. A lot of different programs have come out, like Clean Feed and Jamulus, to allow us to have less of a delay that is present on Zoom. but that requires the singers to be very adept in technology, which is hard for the general population of all of us. You know, we usually are not technologically that savvy. But we have to be now to be musicians.
So, Sarah, you had some learning to do as well. So, when you thought about how you could meet virtually and sing together, tell us more about how you learned specific programs and ways to do that and try to mimic what you can create in person.
Well, one of the first things was Zoom. I had never used it before, never really had a reason to. So that was the first platform that I had to really understand. And thank goodness for YouTube and how to do particular things. People put up a lot of tutorials, which is helpful. And so I learned that way. We were able to use Zoom relatively well for the rehearsal process. But when it came to creating an opportunity for people to sing together, I had to really learn a couple other programs. One of them was, was Logic, which is a sound editing software. And the other one was Final Cut Pro, which is a movie editing software. So if you've ever seen a virtual choir recording on YouTube, you see everybody in their little Brady Bunch boxes. And so iMovie did not do that very effectively. And so I had to learn Final Cut Pro. And I'm not a pro at either Logic or Final Cut, but I was able to learn them well enough to create that sense of singing together, but it's still not the same. But I learned a lot of wonderful technology in the last few months that I never really needed before or assumed that I needed. For the singers, and I think this is one thing that I would love for the general public to understand, is that when the singers create those virtual choir videos, they're singing by themselves. And it's only their voice that gets transmitted and sent to the person who's creating the video. And it's actually almost isolating and hard to do, which is the opposite of what choir is. Choir is we're together, we're in this, you know, as a group, as a cohort. And when you're doing the virtual choir recordings at home, it's just you listening to the recordings in your ear, and it's just your voice going through the microphone.
That sounds really
hard.
That sounds really challenging, Sarah. I understand you use those tools in creating your song, Breath of Blossoms. Tell us about this song and how you went about creating.
Well, actually, right at the very beginning of March, I went to an American Choral Directors Association conference up in New York. And I met a composer, Cheryl Engelhardt, and I really loved some of the work that she was doing. And so probably a few weeks into the pandemic or the social distancing guidelines, she posted something where she took some of her friends and they did an improvisational voice memo recording. And then she put them together and layered it into a song. So everybody individually did a voice memo recording. And I thought, this is really cool. This could be interesting. So I contacted her. She and I spoke and I said, what could we do? And we kind of went back and forth and collaborated a bunch of ideas that finally came out to, we wanted to create a composition that encapsulated all of the singers of our chamber ensemble, all of the singers feeling during this pandemic. Because like I said at the beginning, it really was a loss. Like singing is not just our livelihoods, but our lifeblood. And to have lost that was really tough. And so I thought, how can we encapsulate that? And then how can we mimic singing together? So what we did is we met as a group and we talked about all of our experiences. And out of 12 people, everyone's experiences were vastly different. Some folks were riddled with a little bit of anxiety. Others were like, this is great. I haven't been this free from commitment in a long time. I'm enjoying this break. There were others of us that were pulling our hair out with homeschooling our children. We ran the gamut of experience. And so we took all those experiences and then she went and everybody wrote about their experiences. And she took little pieces of each one to create a text. And one of the running themes was that we felt like our spring had been lost. Like this was a lost spring. And even though we felt lost, spring was still happening outside around us. But we were the ones that just were lost. And then I thought, well, what if we, instead of each individual singer recording by themselves, what if we did a layering technique? So we started with one person, which was Liz. And so Liz sang the beginning, and then I sang with Liz. So I got Liz's recording, I sang with Liz, and then we sent it back to the composer, Cheryl Engelhardt, melded them together, and then sent it out to the next person. So it was sort of like this. One person sang on with the two that already had, and it sort of layered through. So it was the closest we could get to singing together. And we could meld our voices with the voices we were hearing in our ear, rather than just a piano playing the parts and us singing alone.
And Sarah, I wanted to play a portion of this for our listeners. Again, I'm talking with Sarah Koffold, Artistic Director of Concenare Choral Community in Eastern Connecticut. This is Voices of Concinnati Chamber Ensemble performing The Breath of Blossoms. Let's hear a little bit. Well, that just gives me chills. It's so beautiful. And the fact that you sound like that, all of you together, despite not being together and making that music. When you first heard that finished, how did you feel?
It was really incredible because I was one of the first singers to go. So I didn't hear all of the other parts until it came together at the end. And it was incredible. And part of it was also, there was improvisation included in the piece. And so Jermaine, who's one of our baritones, made up his part. He just sang it on the fly on the recording. And I was so excited to hear what he was able to come up with. And I love that song, and I can't wait for us to sing it in person. So that's hopefully on the docket at some point, so that we can actually sing it together in the same space.
This is Where We Live. Today we talk to musicians about how they've found new ways to play and sing together in this pandemic. Are you a performer in Connecticut? You can join us, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Earl's calling in from Hartford earlier on the show.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, so my name's Earl Henrishon, and I play in a local band called the Professors of Sweet Sweet Music, and we go by the Possum. And we have been very fortunate over the last number of years to play a lot of shows and develop an audience. And obviously, a situation that's not unique to us is that we lost all those shows this summer. But we made the decision, even as things started to open back up, that we're not going to play any live shows, because we wanted to sort of put the perception out there that it was okay to try and be cautious and safe. But as a positive that's come from that, I would say that I've had time with my 7-year-old daughter to take up some piano and actually go back to music and practice a little bit in a way that I didn't have time before to do. And so I guess there's a little bit of a positive to that as well, as much as I miss the connection with people and playing in with my band. But the one thing I wanted to add is that my band and Riverfront Recapture had partnered up over the last couple of years to start a festival called the Heartbeat Music Festival. And that had really taken off over its first 2 years. We had about 7,000 people come last year to see local musicians of all genres. And I wanted to put the word out to all local musicians that this year we're going all virtual, and we want musicians to submit a one-song original video, and we're going to try to put them all on there on September 12th. And so if they go to the Heartbeat Music Festival or Riverfront Recapture social media, there's an email, hbvideos2020@gmail.com. You could submit your original videos, and we want to play them all. I'm hoping that's a positive that comes from all this. This whole festival is about community and getting people involved. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I appreciate the platform to do that.
Well, thank you for telling us about that, Earl, again, from Professors of Sweet, Sweet Music. Thank you for that information, and it sounds like a great project. You can join Where We Live as well, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Sarah, before we let you go, you said that, you're all hoping to, again, gather in some way in the future. What is the latest guidance that we're hearing from health officials and how singers, performers can share their music in a safe way?
Well, there was a preliminary findings from a study done at the University of Colorado, an aerosol study that was primarily funded by a ton of arts organizations, mainly instrumentalists as well as singers, to really garner what the risks are, especially since we're emitting sound all the time and it's hard to really sing with a mask on. And please don't quote me on these findings, but it seemed like outside, with 12 feet of distance at least was the most, was the best. And then it varied down from there from these preliminary findings based on how much the aerosol travels and how far. There was a lot of information of HEPA filters and making sure that you weren't in the room for more than 30 minutes of singing or playing instruments. So unfortunately, as a community nonprofit organization, machines that have HEPA filters and that sort of thing is probably not something that we can afford to do. So we have attempted with a small group of singers singing outside and trying to find places with acoustic integrity that would allow for outdoor singing. Things like courtyards or, believe it or not, my driveway. The way there's a hill that allows for enough of an echo so we can hear each other and it can be picked up on recording. None of it's ideal and it's not the same. But right now we feel that singing together is important and we are going to do it safely, and we just have to find out how to do that to keep going, because it doesn't look like we'll be performing in the normal way that we have before anytime soon. So we're just looking for creative ways to still connect with our audience and for the singers to still connect, which is so important.
I want to thank Sarah Kauffold, again, Artistic Director of Concenare Choral Community in Eastern Connecticut. Sarah, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up, we learn how artists in Connecticut continue to find ways to make music together safely. After the break, we hear from Parkville Sounds and later Rock House School of Music. Are you a musician or performing artist? We want to hear from you too. Tell us how you continue to create despite this pandemic's limitations. 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. How has the pandemic affected the way you gather and play music or sing or dance? Today we're talking to local artists in Connecticut, and we want to hear from you too. Join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WMPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Joining us now on the phone is Greg Mattson from Mattson Band. He's from Central Connecticut. Greg, welcome to Where We Live.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
So tell us, you've been playing in a band for some time. How has your schedule changed in this pandemic?
Oh, I think since March 14th, I haven't played, and it's been, I think we lost probably at least 100 shows because the summer got wiped out. But, which is like, it's crazy at first because it's what we're used to doing. But, I think there was we have a responsibility kind of to not condone large gatherings, and, we're itching to play, but it's like, I think like the gentleman said before, it's like, we don't want to, promote a large gathering of people and possibly have a risk of someone, catching, the disease. So, or the virus. But I think there was, as far as me, for my creative outlet, I think a lot of musicians did the same thing and have invested in home studios and really just engaged in recording and kind of finding their outlet that way.
100 shows canceled takes a financial toll. How do you keep your band together, Greg?
We love music, so it's it has been financially, it's been a nightmare, and that's been a hard part too. Thank God there was the PUA for a little bit, the $600 a week, and but even there's a lot of musicians I know that didn't get that, so it's been it's been hard, and we're just trying to wait it out.
You mentioned you have a home studio. Tell us, have you been able to look into streaming and that way of connecting with your community?
Yeah, so I also play in like a funk group, Love Raptor, based out of Bridgeport, and they do a lot of live streaming, and we'll send the songs to each other and then take a video of ourselves playing it, and then it's all edited in like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere afterwards. And then, it's not the same though, because there's always latency issues and there's a slight delay when you're trying to play live on Zoom, which it takes kind of like the feel out of it. And it just doesn't feel the same. But that still is a way we've been creating together and kind of, trying to get that vibe back.
Greg, no one knows when this is all going to end. In the meantime, as someone who loves singing and playing, how do you see the next few months going for you in terms of keeping your band together and finding ways to do what you love?
Well, the cool part is that it's the only good thing that kind of came out of this for me is it gave me a breather to finally write like our next album with the guys. So it's been kind of cool it's the longest gap I've ever had off of not playing. And it's kind of been a way to sit back and be like, okay, well, let's, there's a lot of emotion right now. There's a lot of, there's a lot of sad feelings. There's a lot of like, what's going on? Like, let's just pour this into, more songs and write based on what we're feeling, So that's kind of like how we're getting through it. But on the plus side is we're writing really cool stuff.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So yeah, well, it'll, at the end of the day, once a vaccine comes out and everyone can feel safe again is when, live entertainment can start to, be a thing again. So we just got to kind of wait and keep our heads up.
You're hearing Greg Mattson. He's from Southbury, Connecticut. He's from Mattson Band on the phone with us here on Where We Live. If you are a musician or performing artist, we want to hear from you too. 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Joining us now on Zoom is Stephen Cusano, who's the owner of Parkville Sounds. It's a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So we just heard from Greg, who says that he's been able to find time to work on his next album, to focus on writing. He has a home studio. Not everybody has the space to play at home. And so tell us, as someone who founded Parkville Sounds, how your business has changed in the pandemic.
Well, we haven't changed too much. We've honestly been keeping going to what we're doing. We are just trying to still create a safe and welcoming practice space for everyone. Not everyone does have access to a home recording studio. And honestly, if you do, you're probably not going to have people coming into your house right now, or your bandmates, or you're going to have, practice in your mom's basement or something like that. Not having people over right now. So we provide a safe environment for bands of all kinds and recordings of all kinds.
Parkville Sounds opened up in 2017. So tell us about the space that you have in the Parkville neighborhood, and a little bit more about some of the people that are still coming in your door, still finding a way to play.
Absolutely. So our space is 5,000 square feet. We have multiple different practice rooms. So we have a 2,600 square foot open space with a sprung floor for like a safe dance floor. We also have a sound stage, which is about 1,100 square feet, and then we have our everyday rockin' room, which is just 800 square feet. So we use them for different configurations and capacity levels for bands. So generally anything 4 people will be in our 1477 room, which is our 800 square foot fully equipped rehearsal room. And then everything over 5 people and more would either be in our 1,100 square foot room or our 2,600 square foot room. And we're kind of just rocking with those 3 rooms for open public space. But we do offer lockout rooms. So our lockout rooms have been quite a hit over the past few months here once lockdown happened. So we have 2 lockout rooms that we offer right now that are fully booked, and we are actually in the process of installing about 4 to 6 more practice lockout rooms, which is your own room. You have 24-hour access. You come and go. It's your own space. No one's going to be entering it, and you can use it as you want. So we have that going, which has been a blessing for a lot of musicians that need a place to create.
That sounds interesting, these lockout rooms again. And you're a drummer, so you know that not everybody wants your neighborhood, not everyone in the neighborhood wants to hear you drumming. So
Absolutely.
It's good to have a
Right,
place to go.
100%. And this is, totally soundproofed, and it's perfect for either recording or just practicing. So this is a safe environment in terms of sound and safe in terms of the virus.
Stephen, I wanted to ask, because you're also a musician and you've been in the music scene here in Connecticut for some time. We heard from Sarah earlier about her choral community and the importance of gathering and supporting each other. It's not just about singing, right? And so when I think about the way that the music community is supporting each other, can you talk a little bit about how you've still been able to connect and what that means, especially during this time?
Absolutely. So we've been doing live streams. Live streams has been huge in our studio, whether it's a pre-recorded live stream or actually live and we're broadcasting from the studio. We've done a few of those. So one that we did was actually when George Floyd had died, we did a Jam for Justice, and we raised money for a live show. We had this band called Bree. They're out of New Britain, Connecticut. They came in, and we donated the studio. That was their idea. So we donated the studio, and we put it all together with the sound recording and the video production. And we broadcasted this event called Jam for Justice, and we raised over $2,000 during that evening. And it was just a great night. We had over 1,000 people tune in. So it was extremely satisfying. So that was really great community evening. And then we've done another one that was for Couch Live Music Series with this band called The Lost Tribe. And they're this Couch Live music series is basically allowing bands to continue with gigs. Kara from Couch Live is basically organizing venues or studios across New England and having bands come into those places to do a live stream for that community and that audience there. So it's been great. It's been a new world. Broadcasting is entirely different than what we're used to. So there is always some hiccups there, but it's been great. We're making music, and people are happy to see people in the studio making music, and it's been good just to create again.
You're hearing Stephen Cusano on Zoom here on Where We Live. He's the owner and founder of Parkville Sounds, a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford, Connecticut, as we focus on how musicians and other performing artists are still creating during the pandemic. You can join us, 888-720-9677. We heard from Allison on Twitter. She writes, as a primary ensemble singer, the pandemic has forced me to focus on solo work and to improve my skills on my secondary instrument, the piano, and to learn how to best record myself, a whole other art in which I've rarely engaged. Again, Stephen, this is something that you can help people with.
Absolutely. I can 1,000% help people with that, for sure.
Again, you can join us, 888-720-9677. Jean's calling in from Wethersfield. Jean, you're on the show.
Hi, good morning. I'm the director of the Connecticut Academy of Irish Music, and I thought it might be interesting to just present some of the experiences from the Irish music community, which is obviously, one of the great folk traditions that we have. That's very alive in Connecticut. And many of us have two pieces to what we do. We teach, and as many of your other guests have mentioned, we've been able to pivot to technology a bit, and you can do a lot with that teaching. But the other piece we do is play and perform, and that's been really, really difficult, as your other guests have also indicated. In the Irish music world, a lot of what we do is sit together with other fellow travelers in the music, and we play at what are called sessions. And that's just a bunch of players sitting very close together, playing, and it's very much an oral, A-U-R-A-L, music tradition where we learn tunes by ear, we share them, we don't use any music, and it's just very much a person-to-person kind of musical tradition, and so that's been obviously really impacted. And then for the performers, obviously, it's been very devastating.
Tell me personally, Jean, how you've gone through this pandemic as someone, again, who's used to playing with others and performing, not being able to do that.
Yeah, well, I think Sarah your first guest spoke to the grief and the loss, and I think there was a real sense of that. I think at the beginning, everybody thought, okay, we hunker down for a little while, and then it will come around again. I think we were maybe I anyway was perhaps a little naive about how quickly that might happen, because it hasn't happened yet. And I think once it sets in your mind that it's not coming around anytime soon, you really do have to acknowledge that and grieve the loss of it. But there are, as some of your other guests have indicated, we can do Facebook Lives, we can teach. Some venues have started to come around with outdoor performances, and I've had a few of those. I have one coming up at Stanley Whitman House in a couple of weeks, which I'm very much looking forward to. And those have been really nice, because for many people, it's the chance to just be outside for the first time, hearing live music again. And I think that has made us really appreciate the chance to play with other people and to play for people. And for many people, I think people really appreciate the chance to do that.
When you talk about playing for people, being able to feel and see the way the audience reacts as you play, Jean, that's something that you can't replace that. And so when you were able to play outside in front of people, even though you're all socially distanced, how did that make you feel?
Oh, it was wonderful. It really felt like a rebirth and a renewal. Lots of traditional Irish musicians, like many other musicians, have been doing all sorts of virtual sessions and concerts, and as I said, like Facebook Lives. and other recorded collaborations. And I see them all come around, and, I listen to some of them, but I just always feel like it's not the same.
Yeah.
And this was really amazing, to look out and see your friends and family and your fans, and everyone was just so happy to be there. And obviously for the performers, we share that. It really it felt like a homecoming for me.
You're hearing Jean Freeman on the phone here on Where We Live. She's a director of the Connecticut Academy of Irish Music. You're also a fiddler teacher. How did your students take to online teaching, Jean?
Well, it's interesting. I do have a few that have sort of almost always been online. It's never been my preferred way to teach. I love to be in the room and just share the warmth that you have between the teacher and the student, and you get to know them as a person. And you can still do a lot of that online, but you miss a little bit of it, I think, as we all know, in this era of Zoom meetings and workplaces and music lessons. Some did very well. I had a few who said, I just don't want to do that, which I totally understood. Interestingly, some of my younger students initially seemed to do really well with it, because I think they really took ownership of it. They were there with their screen, and it was just them and me, and there was no intermediary of the parent there, which just was interesting to me, that in some ways the kids seemed to own it. But then after a while, after a few months, I noticed for many of the children, they just started glazing over. I think they were overloaded with screen time from their school situations. I had one family where the mom said, my daughters can't take another screen event. Their dance class is on Zoom, their school is on Zoom, or whatever it was. And she said they just can't take music on top of that. And I totally understood that. Thankfully, I've been able to, so the weather has gotten nice, I've been able to bring some people to my home, and I teach outside on a nice covered porch, and that's been working really well.
Max tweeted, Where We Live, a bright spot for me has been the opportunity to connect virtually with students from all over the country. My private teaching business is unexpectedly booming, and I've enjoyed learning some new audio and video production tools that have allowed me to continue making music. Jean, the fact that you're also teaching, that's helping at least financially when the gigs aren't as booming as in the past?
Yeah, for sure. And so I do two things in my teaching. I teach privately, and again, much of that is all of that right now is either online or socially distanced on my porch in Wethersfield. But I also run the music school, the Connecticut Academy of Irish Music, and I do that with other people. And some of my teachers are from other states, actually, and travel in normally. So it's saved them the travel by they can just teach remotely from where they are. And we actually have gotten some new students in, people who said there's no way I could make it to Wethersfield on Sundays, which is what our normal routine is, but they can do online. So we have picked up a few with that, and we're grateful for that. And I think it's really good just to keep people's skills and progression going. I think most of our students have appreciated the chance to keep working online.
Well, Jean Freeman, thank you for calling in to the show again, director of Connecticut Academy of Irish Music. Again, this is Where We Live. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. My guest on Zoom is Stephen Casano, who's owner and founder of Parkville Sounds, a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford, as we talk about how Connecticut musicians continue to play and sing despite the pandemic. Are you one of them? You can join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Liz tweeted, when the pandemic first hit, I was panicked about losing nearly half my income. Thankfully, I've been able to sing at my local church since it opened for limited capacity masses in July, which is something. Again, you can join us, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. We'll be back after a short break. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up tomorrow, first sky-high electric rates, then thousands of power outages. Frustration with Connecticut's electric utility Eversource is at a boiling point. On the next Where We Live, we hear from lawmakers and the state's utility regulator about how Eversource responded and what needs to change. That conversation tomorrow. Now, today we're talking to musicians who found ways to continue to create and connect with their communities despite the pandemic. Are you one of them? You can join us. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. On Zoom with me, Stephen Cusano, owner and founder of Parkville Sounds, a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford. And joining us now is John McCarthy, founder and instructor at Rock House School of Music in West Haven and Wallingford, Connecticut. He also has a nonprofit that is Teach Kids Music. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us about your music school. I understood that you started teaching back when you were in high school, and what's it been like now in the pandemic reaching your students?
Yeah, we've been lucky. At first, in March when the pandemic hit, it was like a punch in the stomach to us. But what I shortly thereafter said is we have to become the best at teaching online, and that's what we did. We were thinking of teaching online for a while, makeup lessons when snowstorms or things like that. But people weren't as receptive to it. But now, since this happened, everyone was a lot more receptive to doing lessons online. So we had to go completely online for a while, and we really did our homework and found out how to position cameras in different places and get the sound to be perfect. And so we were able to keep a good part of our business that way. And then in June, we started offering lessons back in the studio with our guidelines and safety and the teachers wearing masks and everything. And we're lucky we have some big rooms where we can separate the people a little bit. And so we're getting things back rolling, I think, a little bit here. Mm.
You've been a longtime musician. You have instructional videos. So in a way, you were almost, you were prepared for this pandemic and ways to reach your students. But did you find that your students were dealing with screen fatigue?
At times they got overloaded with the screens and everything like that. And there's nothing like a one-on-one connection when you're in a room with the student. But it's a second best, and it was able to keep the kids involved with music and still progressing in music. So that was our goal. We wanted to make sure we kept them still, involved and focusing on music. And, because if you had like 2 to 3 months go by without playing music at all, they start to lose that role. And so it was important for them to keep going.
Tell us how you've been able to stay connected with the community at large, John, in terms of, again, music bringing people together and not just learning how to play, but just enjoying being around each other and listening.
Well, we in the past, we've always had what we call a youth open mic, where we had our students, like say you're learning guitar, another student's learning bass, another one's singing bass and guitar. And piano. We put them all together to work on songs, and once a month we were having these performances, and it was really snowballing. We were getting a lot of young kids starting bands, and we were really looking optimistically about maybe creating a new music scene in the whole state where a lot more bands could start evolving. So once the pandemic started, one of our instructors, Heather Lee, she started doing some Facebook Live concerts from one of our rooms because they're bigger rooms. And one day it was a nice day out, and she said, "Do you mind if we go on the porch?" Because our Wallingford school has a big, huge porch. Mm-hmm. And we painted it like a big piano, so the whole porch looks like a piano. So she went out there, and she was just doing a Facebook Live show, and organically people started coming and taking their chairs and sitting out. And then other instructors said, "Do you mind if I come in? I'll bring my drums out. We'll still socially distance." And we ended up having, full bands there, socially distancing, and the crowds have been growing, and the community of Wallingford has been loving it. It's been just a great vibe going on in the city. A lot of the restaurants there have takeout or outside with their seating, and we provided your music for that. You can hear it all around the downtown Wallingford area.
That sounds awesome. Porch concerts. Again, you're hearing John McCarthy, founder and instructor at Rock House School of Music in West Haven and Wallingford. Nick's calling in from New Haven. Nick, we just have a couple of minutes. What do you want to share?
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I've been a longtime colleague of Steve's, and I just wanted to commend him for the work he's doing. But also add that down in New Haven, I'm the founder of the New Haven Jazz Underground, and we've been doing similar concerts. We've been producing what we call our Mind the Hang series. And aside from broadcasting concerts of jazz groups local to the New Haven scene, we've been raising money for local organizations such as Black Lives Matter, the New Haven Pride Center, and the Connecticut Food Bank. So I'm just really happy to hear about all the other organizations and individuals kind of bringing the state together on a musical level. It's reassuring these uncertain times.
Well, thank you, Nick, for calling in. Stephen Kazana, I want to go back to you. When we think about the future of music, music industry has evolved. How do you think the next several months, the next year, in terms of how the music scene will change, even in our state of Connecticut?
I think for what's coming for us, if we would like to keep listening to music, I think live music is going to turn into listening rooms. I feel like that's the way we need to go right now. Smaller capacity, sit down at your table, listening to music, not really in a dive bar scene, not really in a bar setting, but in a nice outside space that has seating, and you're allowed to just listen to music with the band kind of placed further away from people. I think we're heading into listening rooms again. Which is where I do, jazz was born. So I do think we're headed back in this way where people are going to be just, more active listening rather than passively listening to music.
John McCarthy, final thoughts on that question of the future of music in our state?
Well, I think I'm a little more optimistic than a lot of people. I think that I see a light at the end of the tunnel with this whole thing, and I think that things are going to start getting better, and I think that by November, December, we're going to start seeing things go back to normal a little bit more. And I know, for our school, people are so into playing and excited to start playing again, and I think that we'll find different ways. Obviously, everything evolves, and might be different changes here or there, but I think that we're going to see things get back to a little bit more normal.
John, I mentioned you have a nonprofit, Teach Kids Music. We've just got a minute left, but working with children in underprivileged communities, how will that continue?
So yeah, Teach Kids Music, what we do is, one of our main missions is we take donations of gently used instruments, and we provide them to children that are in need, that don't have the resources, that really want to play music, but they might have a single parent. And we put the instruments right into the hands. A lot of people have a guitar or a keyboard just sitting in a closet somewhere, or the drums or whatever. And, they're not doing much good in the closet, but if a child could get it and it could spark the music into their life, I think it's a great thing. So, we take a picture of the person donating the instrument, and then the child that when they get it, and so that people can see how they're changing the lives of these children.
And you hope that work will continue, even in a pandemic.
Absolutely, yes. And we've been giving instruments out throughout the whole pandemic. And, kids are looking for things to do. They're at home and they're sick of doing the same old thing sitting at home. And, learning an instrument is a great thing.
Right. Well, John McCarthy, I want to thank you, founder and instructor at Rock House School of Music in West Haven and Wallingford, Connecticut. We appreciate your time today here on Where We Live. Also, Stephen Cusano, owner and founder of Parkville Sounds, a full-service recording studio and rehearsal space in Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you both. Today's show, produced by Tess Terrible. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. We hope you tune in tomorrow as we talk about Eversource. Thanks again.